The date is April 5th, 1992, and the Indiana Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis is charged with electricity, packed to the rafters with over 62,000 raucous fans. Wrestlemania VIII is in full swing, and the main event is about to begin. As Real American blares through the arena, the beloved Hulk Hogan makes his way to the ring in his signature red and yellow attire. But tonight, something is different. The crowd's cheers are tinged with an undercurrent of anticipation, even trepidation, because across the ring stands a towering figure, a man whose very presence seems to darken the atmosphere. At 6'9" and 317 pounds of chiseled muscle, Sid Justice looms like a colossus. His wild, unkempt hair frames a face contorted with barely contained rage. As he paces the ring, his eyes dart maniacally, promising violence. This is not just another opponent for Hogan. This is a force of nature, a man who has spent months tormenting the Hulkster and now stands poised to usurp his throne as the Federation's top star. The bell rings, and what unfolds is not just a wrestling match, but a clash of titans that will be etched in the annals of sports entertainment history. Sid's raw power and unbridled aggression prove a perfect foil for Hogan's heroic persona. As the two behemoths collide, the crowd is whipped into a frenzy, their loyalties torn between the familiar hero and this compelling new villain. This moment, this match, represents the pinnacle of Sid Justice's first run in the World Wrestling Federation. But how did this small-town boy transform into the psychotic powerhouse that now commanded the attention of millions? Born on December 16, 1960, Sidney Ray Udy's journey to wrestling stardom began in the heartland of Arkansas, where he spent his formative years, in a world far removed from the glitz and glamour of professional wrestling. As a young man, Sid was more interested in other sports, particularly baseball. In fact, he once said that he would cry if a baseball game got rained out. Such was his passion for the sport. Udy was deeply rooted in the agricultural lifestyle, working on a sprawling farm that boasted over 100,000 acres. This wasn't just any farm job. Sid had aspirations of becoming a crop duster, studying aviation with the intent of taking to the skies over the vast fields he tended. However, fate had different plans, taking Sid down a path to professional wrestling, albeit an unconventional one. Unlike many of his contemporaries who grew up idolizing wrestlers and dreaming of stepping into the ring, Sid stumbled into the business almost by accident. In the mid-1980s, while working out at a gym in Memphis, Tennessee, he caught the eye of several wrestlers who were part of the local territory. They saw in Sid what promoters would see for years to come, a physical specimen with the potential to be a major draw. Among those who noticed Sid was none other than Macho Man Randy Savage. Savage, along with his brother Lanny Poffo and Hillbilly Jim, who was then known as Harley Davidson, encouraged Sid to give wrestling a try. At first, Sid was hesitant. After all, he hadn't watched wrestling since he was a child, but his wife was pregnant, and the lucrative financial potential was appealing. In a later interview, Sid would admit, "I never had the love for the business. It was really just to make money." This pragmatic approach to wrestling would define much of Sid's career, setting him apart from many of his peers who lived and breathed the business. Sid's wrestling career began in 1987 in Continental Championship Wrestling, where he wrestled under a mask as Lord Humongous. From there, Sid moved on to New Japan Pro Wrestling and had a brief stint in World Class Championship Wrestling before landing in World Championship Wrestling in 1989. It was in WCW that Sid began to make a name for himself as Sid Vicious. His imposing presence and raw power made him stand out, even in an era when larger-than-life characters were the norm. Sid's time in WCW was marked by high-profile feuds and alliances, including a partnership with Dan Spivey as the Skyscrapers. But it was his move to the World Wrestling Federation in 1991 that would truly catapult Sid to superstardom. Debuting as Sid Justice, he was immediately positioned as a major player. His first significant storyline saw him as the special guest referee for the SummerSlam 1991 main event between Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior against the Triangle of Terror. This role put Sid front and center, showcasing his imposing presence to the WWF audience. Sid's rise in the Federation was meteoric. By the end of 1991, he was already being positioned as a potential successor to Hulk Hogan. The WWF even staged a passing of the torch moment, with Hogan and Sid performing a pose-down together. However, this segment didn't sit well with Sid. In later interviews, he would call it the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life, feeling that it was a hollow gesture that didn't truly elevate his status. Despite his reservations, Sid continued to be pushed as a top star. He entered the 1992 Royal Rumble as a favorite to win, lasting until the final two before being eliminated by Ric Flair. This set the stage for his WrestleMania VIII showdown with Hogan, a match that was supposed to cement Sid's status as the company's top heel. However, the aftermath of WrestleMania VIII marked a turning point in Sid's WWF career. Despite the high-profile match and the intense feud with Hogan, Sid left the company shortly after. The reasons for his departure have been debated over the years, with Sid claiming that he was unhappy with his position in the company and the direction of his character. The reality, which UD later revealed, is that sometime in 1991, Sid found himself at a career crossroads, faced with a seemingly irresistible offer from WCW that promised $750,000 in guaranteed money, a significant increase from his $250,000 WWF salary. Despite initially deciding to make the jump back to WCW, Vince McMahon intervened, persuading Sid to remain with the WWF by dangling the prospect of a substantial payday from WrestleMania VIII. Yet this promised windfall never materialized, leaving Sid feeling disillusioned and resentful about the financial opportunity he had foregone. After leaving the WWF, Sid returned to WCW for a brief stint, but this run was cut short by a notorious incident in October 1993. During a tour in England, Sid was involved in a hotel room brawl with Arn Anderson that resulted in both men being stabbed with scissors. Fellow wrestler 2 Cold Scorpio intervened in the altercation, an act widely credited with saving Anderson's life. The incident led to Sid's release from WCW and left a black mark on his reputation in the industry. For many wrestlers, such an incident might have spelled the end of their career in major promotions, but Sid's unique combination of size, look, and charisma meant that doors remained open for him. In 1995, despite the bad blood from his previous departure, Vince McMahon welcomed Sid back to the WWF. Unsurprisingly, Sid was initially hesitant to return due to the financial instability of working in the company, yet he ultimately agreed to rejoin after McMahon met his demands for a guaranteed weekly salary, securing the deal. Sid's return to the Federation on February 20th, 1995 was presented as a major event. Now known as Sycho Sid, he was immediately thrust into a high-profile role as the bodyguard of Shawn Michaels. This alliance, however, was short-lived. In one of the most memorable turns of the era, Sid attacked Michaels on the April 3rd, 1995 episode of Monday Night Raw, power-bombing him multiple times and again solidifying his status as one of the company's top heels. 2 weeks later, on the April 17th episode of Raw, the $1 Million Man unveiled Sid as the crown jewel of the $1 Million Corporation. The feud with Shawn Michaels would define much of Sid's 1995 run, as well as a notable non-title match against Intercontinental Champion Razor Ramon. Although this second WWF run would be interrupted by injury, a serious neck injury sidelined him in late 1995, forcing him to take time off, and he soon took on a role as an advertising representative in California while he recovered. This setback could have derailed Sid's career, but it ultimately set the stage for his most successful period in the Federation. Sid returned to WWF television in July 1996. Initially as a babyface, his comeback was marked by increased intensity and crowd support. The fans, who had once booed him as a villain, now cheered his devastating powerbomb finisher. The pinnacle of this period came on November 17th, 1996, at the Survivor Series pay-per-view. In front of a wild crowd in Madison Square Garden, Sid defeated Shawn Michaels to win his first WWF championship. Yet his first reign as champion lasted just 2 months until January 19th, 1997, when he lost the title back to Michaels at the Royal Rumble. Nevertheless, his status as a main event player was now firmly established. Just over a month later, on February 17, 1997, Sid regained the championship by defeating Bret Hart on an episode of Monday Night Raw. This second reign would lead Sid to the main event of WrestleMania XIII on March 23rd. In a full-circle moment, Sid found himself headlining the Federation's biggest show of the year, just as he had 5 years earlier. This time, his opponent was The Undertaker. The match was a hard-hitting affair, showcasing Sid's power against The Undertaker's mystique. In the end, The Undertaker emerged victorious, ending Sid's second championship reign. Despite the loss at WrestleMania, Sid remained a key figure in the Federation throughout early 1997. He was involved in high-profile feuds and continued to be positioned as one of the company's top stars. However, fate would once again intervene in Sid's career. In July 1997, Sid suffered a neck injury that required surgery. This injury would mark the end of his second run with the WWF. After leaving, Sid would have one more run in WCW from 1999 to 2001, including a reign as heavyweight champion. Yet his time in WCW was marred by inconsistent booking and a devastating leg injury suffered at the Sin pay-per-view in 2001, effectively ending his full-time wrestling career. After this severe injury and the subsequent rehabilitation, Sid Justice made sporadic appearances in wrestling, including roles as a commissioner for World Wrestling All-Stars and matches in various independent promotions. Despite being told he would never run again, Justice's determination led him to not only walk, but eventually run once more. His last significant appearances in mainstream wrestling came in 2012 with WWE, participating in the build-up to Raw's 1000th episode. Justice's final match took place on August 5, 2017, for Great North Wrestling in Ottawa, Ontario, marking the end of a career that spanned 3 decades and multiple major promotions. Looking back on Sid's career, it's a study in contrasts. He was a man who, by his own admission, entered wrestling primarily for the money, yet he achieved levels of success that many lifelong fans of the business never reached. He was a dominant physical Goliath who could command attention simply by walking into an arena, yet his most memorable moments often came from his promos, which ranged from intensely charismatic to unintentionally comical. Sid's legacy in professional wrestling is complex. He was never the most technically proficient wrestler, nor was he known for his long, epic matches. What Sid brought to the table was an undeniable presence and persona that fit perfectly with the larger-than-life world of professional wrestling. In many ways, Sid was a transitional figure in wrestling. He rose to prominence in the tail end of the Hulkamania era, reached his peak during the dawn of the Attitude Era, and had his final run as the Monday Night Wars were reaching their conclusion. Throughout these changing times in the business, Sid remained a constant, a towering, intimidating figure who could convincingly stand toe-to-toe with any opponent. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Sid's career is the disconnect between his approach to the business and his success within it. While many wrestlers speak of their passion for the industry, their lifelong dreams of being in the ring, Sid was always frank about his motivations. Wrestling was a job to him, a means to an end. Yet, this business-like approach didn't prevent him from connecting with audiences and achieving significant success. Tragically, on August 26, 2024, news broke that Sid Justice had passed away at the age of 63 after a lengthy battle with cancer. His son, Gunnar, shared the news on social media, describing his father as a man of strength, kindness, and love. In the end, Sid Justice, Sycho Sid, Sid Justice, whatever name you knew him by, left an indelible mark on professional wrestling. He was a commanding force in the ring, a memorable character outside of it, and a wrestler who achieved great success on his own terms. Love him or hate him, you couldn't ignore him, and in the world of professional wrestling, that just may be the highest compliment of all. Rest in peace, Sid. The powerbombs may have stopped, but the impact lives on.